Good evening, everyone. My name is Akiva Balter. I'm right here down in the corner of the PowerPoint. You can see me somewhat wearing a mask and a little bit hidden. But I just like to go over the program with you, what you can expect tonight, this evening. Number one is, obviously, it's the Ani Maamin Foundation, and you're at the virtual Parlour meeting, which is starting right now. I work with GamZoom Ltova, and we manage and facilitate Zoom meetings, and we try to make it under an hour. So if you're here, you will be done within the hour. Tonight on the program on video is Rabbi Pogrow. He's the executive director of the Ani Maamin Foundation. We'll hear from our Pinchas Jung Shlita, then from Rabbi Leff, and then live, we're going to hear from the founder and director of the Ani Maamin Foundation, and the highlight of the evening from Rabbi Dovid Sapirman. And I'm wearing his mask because I'm at his house and he is within Dalat Amis of me. Finally, the important part, which we expect your contribution, generous contributions, we'll be posting up the donation, the links and the address so you can send the Canadian version or the American version. Just a few things for those who may be comfortable with Zoom and may not be comfortable with Zoom. So I will go over some of the etiquette that you can expect. Number one, the mute button is down in the corner right over there. That's the mute button. Next to it is the video button. When you're part of a Zoom meeting, sometimes it's difficult for you to be seen the entire time. You may be wanting to do something personal. Also, it's difficult for us sometimes to see you, or you don't want to see us. It's okay to turn the video off for a few moments. We, of course, do want to see you on the screen. We want to know you're participating. So that's the video button that can be pressed on and off, similar to the mute button. The participants button is over here. When you click on it, you can see who else is in the meeting, and you could send them a note, similar to sending a note in class. That's what you can do right there in the chat button. Everything else is not in the reactions. Of course, when there's something nice and you can't speak because you're muted, don't feel free to send an emoticon. That's a thumbs up or a clap or a heart. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is your choice of what you can see on the screen. Do you want to see the speaker? That's going to be the standard, or do you want to see the entire gallery? That's everybody on the screen. You could see everyone who's in the meeting. Of course, the screen size shrinks and you see them a little bit smaller. You can go full screen, that's down on the bottom, and it will fill your computer completely. Okay, at this point, we will start with the video, and I will post that up right away. Thank you.
Please share the phone in number, the phone in number. Share the phone in number.
I should put that on? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. For those who want to call in, if you're calling from Toronto, 647-558-0588. The Zoom ID is 603-550-1948, and the passcode is 1948. Again, 647-558-0588. And then the ID is 603-550-1948. And the password is 129129. Alternatively, if you need to text me, either text your coordinator, wherever you got the email from, or you can text me at 647-688-4560.
Series of challenges, at times exhilarating, but often unpredictable, and frequently as complex as a stormy sea. Navigating these turbulent waters can be intimidating and even overwhelming, especially for a child, adolescent, or young adult. Someone whose faith in Hashem and His Torah is solid need not be afraid. Today's youth have questions. Those that don't have questions need the clarity and conviction in the fundamentals of our faith. The Ani Maamin Foundation was created to address this need. The Foundation's message has been received with great enthusiasm by hundreds of leading educators around the world. Ani Maamin currently offers the following programs and services: a comprehensive Emunah course on CD, live and remote interactive presentations for educators, parents, and students. Ani Maamin is currently preparing training seminars for educators and parents, an Emunah hotline for anyone in need of answers, Thanks to the efforts of the Ani Maamin Foundation, hundreds of individuals have already had their emunah strengthened. With Hashem's help, thousands more will benefit.
Chazal tell us that originally every one of the 613 mitzvahs provided a pathway to Kol HaTorah Kula. As the generations diminished, fewer and fewer avenues remained open through which a person could connect to Hashem Yisborach, His Torah, and His mitzvahs. Then the Navi Chavaku came along and established Kol HaTorah Kula on one single pillar, the pillar of Emunah. Bo Chavakuk v'hamidon al achas, v'tzadik be'emunasa yichye. A ben or bas Torah that has the clarity of conviction that there is indeed a Borei Olam who gave us his Torah on Har Sinai will formulate their entire value system to conform to the dictates of Hashem Yisborach in his Torah. In contrast, Judaism without Emunah is hardly more than a lifestyle. In recent times, it has been incorrectly assumed that every frum person automatically has this Emunah. The Ani Maamin Foundation was created to inject inspiration into our youth, their parents, and their educators. This will enable them to serve Hashem Yisborach with conviction and inspiration, and to have the answers to be able to reach out to others as well. May it soon be fulfilled, the pasuk that says, Umala ha'oretz deya es Hashem, kamayim layom mechasim, that the entire world will recognize and serve only the one true Creator, and that soon we will merit the Gula Shlema b'korayv b'mheirav yameinu. Amen.
One of the fringe benefits of having the opportunity to work closely with the Ani Maamin Foundation has been the ability and the zchus to develop a relationship with Rav Pinchas Jung Shlita. Rav Jung is well known as an expert mechanech for many decades, befrat in the area of chinuch habonos. His uncanny skill to convey Yesodei Hadas, Yesodei Ha'emunah with a mesikus, with clarity and with conviction to the Talmidos, befrat, and to all the students that he engages with, and to disarm them in a fashion where they feel comfortable discussing with him all areas of Yahadus, of Emunah that may be wondering about. He has done numerous Shabbatonim, weekends with the schools, and those sessions go on for hours and hours, usually without the staff present, so that the students feel comfortable discussing, and he's there for them, and he gives them the time of day and night. We have received letters from girls stating nothing short that their lives have been changed. One girl wrote an incredible letter that as a result of Rabbi Jung, she actually saved her life. She was in such a difficult situation, in a personal, internal situation. And as a result of her interaction with Rabbi Jung, she made a complete turnaround, and that girl, Baruch Hashem, was married with a beautiful family. Another incredible zechus we have working with Rabbi Jung is Rabbi Jung's ability to have a statement, to do training sessions. Rabbi Jung not long ago went to Australia for a marathon training session for hundreds of mechanchim over a 16-day period where he lectured every few hours. And mechanchim and mechanchis now are empowered to transmit with clarity and conviction the Yesodis Emunah. And it's a zchus and an honor to have Rabbi Jung join us this evening. Thank you.
It's a great privilege and an opportunity to share some thoughts in honor of tonight's Ani Maamin Foundation event. This year, if I have got it right, is the Bar Mitzvah year of Ani Maamin Foundation, deserving therefore special attention. Now, besides the lectures, which are great, and people certainly are fascinated by them, when we try to explain to them the foundations of Emunah and why it really all makes sense and while we have compelling evidence of what we're saying, even so, there's nothing as effective and as powerful as a Q&A session. At a Q&A session, you don't hear what we would like to talk about, you hear what you want to hear. And particularly the young people, the teenagers especially, but not only, very much feel a need to ask their questions in a non-judgmental setting and need to feel free that they can ask what they wish. Why are they free to ask what they wish? Because they're doing so to learn, not to mock chas v'sholem, but to grow. On the contrary, this way they can make progress in their emunah, and this will impact their Torah and their mitzvahs in a very meaningful way. Now, when you do give a lecture, you can only speak for so long. And the best speaker, an hour? Or how long can you really continue? But a Q&A session, experience has shown us again and again, can go on and on, almost without limitations. Personally, I remember summer camps where we used to have sessions beginning in the evening, and at a certain point in time, which is way after midnight, we used to say, we're going to have to come back and meet up again. It was once on a Thursday night, we had to meet up again on a Friday afternoon, because there were so many questions and there just wasn't time, and it was too much already. It was too much in one go. So this is the tremendous power of a Q&A session, which gives the young people an opportunity to clear their minds. And when they get the feeling that it's okay to ask, it's not a problem, you're not an apikoros for asking, you're someone who is seeking growth, then of course the attitude changes right away. What are we trying to show them? Quite simply, that the Torah is true, the Masorah is true, not only Torah shebiksav, but also Torah sheba'al peh, and this is the correct and one and only interpretation of Torah, and that Hashem wanted the Chachomim to give their contribution to Torah sheba'al peh, and that it is lo b'shamayim. Torah is originally everything given from Hashem, but is to be discussed and debated by the Chachomim, and we show them to this, try our best with a clarity and with the relevant, compelling evidence. So we let the young people feel that no question is taboo, that our stories in Tanakh are true stories, especially the stories in Chumash, that the other religions, which are all basically the brainchild of one individual, which have been phenomenally successful as far as numbers go, but if you're concerned about the truth, there's no evidence to a single word that any of these people have said. Whereas in Torah lahavdil, it's quite the opposite. Moshe Rabbeinu was no orator, as we see quite clearly in Chumash, in more than one place, and therefore his words are indeed the genuine Devar Hashem. And Baruch Hashem, I think it's also safe to say that we've never experienced failures in these Q&A sessions, and they've always been asking for more. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi Jung, for your wonderful, warm words, inspiring Divrei Chachma and Divrei Osiris on behalf. 29 years ago, I was learning in Eretz Yisrael as a young bacher, and on Erev Tisha B'Av, a young man in the yeshiva approached me and offered me the opportunity to go with a group of boys the next morning, Shachris, on Tisha B'Av morning, to Mashal Matisyahu for Kinnis with Rav Leff Shlita. At that time, I don't think I had ever heard of Mashal Matisyahu. I don't think I had ever heard of Rav Leff, but it seemed like an interesting opportunity, and I joined. And all I can say is that the next day, the 3 or 4 hours saying Kinnis, listening to Rav Leff Shlita explain, present, and clarity in Yesodei Hadas, in the Yesodis of Kinnis, in the Yesodis Emunah, was an experience that certainly not an over exaggeration to say is life altering. The things I heard that day have stayed with me. I review them every year on Tisha B'Av. And people that have the opportunity to spend their lives with Rav Leff either because they live in the community or they're familiar with the Svarim he's written, he's given, or they are lucky. They're lucky people. And it's almost funny to think that I have been given the opportunity to thank Rav Leff Shlita and to invite him to join us this evening to share with us Divrei Chizuk, Divrei Bracha, and to gain from his incredible ability to present basics of Yahadus, basics of Emunah. People often maybe don't pay enough attention to, maybe it falls by the wayside, and to hear them as he presents them with such clarity and conviction, it's a zchus and a pleasure and an honor to be able to have the Rav join us this evening at this event. Thank you.
The Mesilas Yesharim tells us that sometimes the most basic and obvious things can be forgotten or totally ignored. And he begins by telling us that the most basic thing is Yisod HaChasidus, V'shoresh Ha'avoda Hatmima, Hu she'yizbar v'yisametz esel ha'adam machovaso be'olamo. The foundation of everything is that a person should know what his purpose in this world is, so he knows how to conduct himself properly. However, in those first four words, Yesod HaChasidus V'shoresh Ha'avoda, he hints that there is something even more basic, and that is Shem Havaya, to know that there's a God who created that world. Before you can know how to conduct yourself in your world, you have to know what the world is, and who is the creator of the world, and why the world was created. The Chazon Ish explains that emunah, faith, belief, is the abstract foundation, and bitachon, having trust in the Rabbanu Shalom, is putting that abstract and realizing it in actuality. The same goes for Musar and Yiras Shamayim and working on one's midos. The emunah is the abstract, and what comes out of that emunah is Yiras Shamayim, is midos tovos, and so on. And this is what we say every day in the broch of Avo Rabbah, V'sein b'libeinu lehavin ulehaskil, lishmoa lilmod ulelamed, lishmor v'lasos ulekayem es kol divrei Talmud tzarasecha b'ahava. Lahavin is to understand the foundation, the basics, emunah, lahaskil, and to take those basics and to bring them to fruition and realize them through Musar, Yiras Hashem, Bitachon, and so on. And then Lilmod, Ulelamed, Lishmor V'lasos, Ulekayem es kol divrei Talmud tzarasecha b'ahava. But first you need the foundations, Emunah, Yiras Shamayim, Musar, and so on. Perhaps this is hinted to in the fact that a boy becomes bar mitzvah at 13. The girl, because of her Bina Yisera, reaches that 13 at 12. But the 13 is the number that represents maturity to be able to observe the Torah properly. And that 13 hints to three other 13s. The 13 principles of faith, the Ani Maamin, Shlosh Esrei Ikarim, that is the foundation. And then the Shlosh Esrei Midos of the Rabbanu Shalom, which is the foundation of all Musar. And then the Shlosh Esrei Midos Shatorah Nidreshes Bahem. And then a person can go and learn Torah and observe its mitzvahs properly. And the foundation of Emunah has to be strong, clear, with knowledge of all the details. How can one say Ani Maamin be'emunah shleima if he has no idea what the emunah entails? And then it must be internalized and not just believed as an abstract, but something that's real. And they used to give the marshal that people see a park bench glistening with a sign on it, wet paint, their knee-jerk reflex reaction is to touch the bench and look at their finger and see the paint on it. There's an idea of knowing something and feeling it with your entire being. That's how strong the emunah has to be. And this emunah shlema can only come through learning and through thinking. We're not talking now about deep philosophical proofs, but we're talking about the basics of what a Jew is supposed to believe in and why he's supposed to believe in that and what the basic ideas behind it are. And if you don't have that learning and that thinking and that pondering, then what is basic and instinctive to animals, Yod Ashor Konehu, V'chamor Evus Ba'alav, an ox knows who its master is. A donkey at least knows who feeds it. But Yisrael or Yoda, but Klal Yisrael, it's possible not to know these basics. Who the Rebbeinu Shalom is, who feeds us, because Amilo Hisbonon, because we don't think, and we don't learn, and we don't ponder. However, in previous generations, where Jews were able to be insulated from the negative ideas that permeated the world, so they imbibed these basic emunah with their mother's milk, with the environment of the home, with the environment of the Jewish frum environment around them. However, Israel Salanter in his generation recognized that this wasn't the case anymore, and people did not imbibe Yiras Shamayim and Musar with their mother's milk, and the Jewish people were not as insulated as they were before, and therefore they needed to learn Musar and to think about it deeply in order to be able to have that derech hachayim of midos tovos that emulate the Rebbeinu Shalom's midos. And in our generation, with all the proliferation of Torah, the Rambam tells us that derech briyoso shel adam, it's the very nature of a person to be influenced by the environment around him, and we are no longer insulated from the environment around, which is an environment of kfira, of atheism, of random evolution, that man is merely a more intelligent animal. The Torah tells us that it's imperative, binu shnos dor vador zechor yemos olam, to know history, yet to know the characteristics and identify the characteristics of each generation and the differences, shnos dor vador, the differences between generations. The Michtav Meliol tells us that every generation has its specific Yetzer Hara, and that specific Yetzer Hara must be addressed in each generation. However, Sha'al Avicha v'Yageitcha, those changes and those differences, to deal with the characteristics of the generation, have to be based and anchored in Mesorah. Sha'al Avicha v'Yageitcha, ask your father and he'll tell you. Anchor it in tradition. And how do you anchor it in tradition? Zekeinecha v'yomrulach, by following Das Torah, following the guidance of Gedolei Yisrael of that generation. And just like it is imperative, as Reb Chaim Volozhiner tells us in Nefesh HaChaim, that before a person learns Torah, he should think about Yiras Shamayim and Musar in order to introduce the preservative to Torah, that is Yiras Shamayim, that the Torah become a Sam HaChayim, an elixir of life, and not Chas v'Sholom, the opposite. So too in our generation, we need Dam Ashetoshiv Lapikoris. We know what to answer, not the Apikoris out there. We don't get into discussions with apikursim, but the apikuros within you, the questions, the doubts, the misinformation that people have. They have to know how to answer their own doubts and their own questions, in order that they should be able to come to Musar and Yiras Shamayim, which is the preservative of all Talmud Torah. Perhaps this is what Chazal meant when they said that Al Meh Ovda Ha'aretz Al Ozlam Es Torasi, that they forsook the Torah, and Chazal say Shelo Berchu BaTorah Tchila. They didn't make a bracha before they learned Torah. The noted Yehuda in the Tshuva says that one does not have to say L'Shem Yichud before he performs a mitzvah, because that is the purpose of the bracha, to focus on us. Where does this mitzvah come from? Where do we come from? Baruch Atah Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hashem, who is the creator and the master, Aleph Daled Nun Yud, the master of the world, Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Kedishanu B'mitzvosav V'tzivanu, that the Rabbanu Shalom gave us a Torah. The Torah is divinely given. All of these are the foundations of Emunah that a person expresses, if he knows what they mean, before he performs any mitzvah and before he learns any Torah. And if one does not make that bracha and doesn't anchor his Torah learning in Emunah, in Musar and Yiras Shamayim, then it becomes what the Navi says, mitzvahs anoshim milumada. It's mitzvahs that one does by rote, external, peripheral, and that is what brought about Churban Beis Hamikdash. In every generation, Hashem sees to it that there are people who recognize the needs and the weaknesses of their generation, people who are determined and capable to implement the necessary programs to meet those needs and to strengthen those weaknesses. Rabbi Dovid Sapirman is one of those individuals who recognize the need of our generation to establish the Ani Maamin organization, to strengthen the proliferation of Emunah to our children, to Yeshiva Bochrim, to Beis Yaakov girls, in order that they should have the Lahavim Ulahaskil before they have the Lishmoa Lilmod Ulalamed. And this program is implemented, anchored in Masorah, and guided by Das Torah of Gedolei Yisrael. Chazal tell us that one of the zechuyos, the merits that we'll have to leave this galus and to be redeemed, is the schus of emunah. Anyone who supports, who strengthens this organization, Ani Maamin, and Rabbi Sapirman's efforts, will be zoche tremendous reward in helping to raise a generation of Maaminim, B'nai Maaminim, whose Torah and mitzvahs will be genuine Torah and mitzvahs. And in that schus, we'll see B'mheira, Bias Kol Tzedek, B'mheira V'yomein.
Thank you, Harav Leff Shlita, for taking the time and joining us this evening, and for your incredibly warm Divrei Chizuk and Divrei Sayris on this important topic, and for your ongoing encouragement in all the efforts on the Ani Maamin Foundation, and especially the beautifully warm haskama that you have provided for the forthcoming book that will be released within the next few weeks. Over the last 7+ years that I've merited working with the Ani Maamin Foundation, I've been asked on numerous occasions by friends, acquaintances, so tell me, Moshe, how is it that you became to be involved in the Ani Maamin Foundation? For about a decade, I had been following Rabbi Sapirman in the paper, in the media. I would notice a write-up in this community or a write-up in that community where Rabbi Sapirman would be giving shiurim on these very interesting topics, basics of Yahadus. Back in my mind thinking, Mosai Yovai Hayoim, when would the time come when I would be able to at least hear the shiurim for myself or perhaps meet Rabbi Sapirman in person? Then one day, about 7.5 years ago, I was on the way back from a chassan in Montreal, and the husband and wife who were driving the car asked, was it okay with me if they would pop a shiur into the CD? Of course, I said, no problem. And they put in the CD from Rabbi Sapirman, You Had a Revelation, which presents the Kuzari's explanation on how we know that the basics of Yadus, that Maimon Har Sinai really took place. And as I sat there in the car and listened, I was blown away. This was a topic I hadn't much been bothered about. I wasn't a deep questioner as a child. I went to wonderful yeshivas, but I certainly never heard this presentation. And to hear it with such clarity, compelling, was so encouraging and so fascinating to me. At the end of this year, I asked the husband and wife, would it be okay if I took down the phone number on the CD? And as soon as I got home, shortly thereafter, I called Rabbi Sapirman, introduced myself, and I said, Rabbi Dovid, please, next time you're in New York, please stay by me. I would like to get to know you. I would like to introduce you to some moisdes. And from there began the relationship. And the truth of the matter is I benefited greatly, even personally. It wasn't long after that my daughter, who was then at the time 11 or 12, asked me, so tell me, Ta, there are 1 billion Muslims, hundreds of millions of Christians. The Muslims are ready to be moistu nefesh for what they believe in. How do we know that we're right and they're not? How do we know that we're right and they're not? How do we know that we're right and they're not? Baruch Hashem, by that time I had become quite familiar with the topics and with the sugyas through Rabbi Sapirman's materials, and I was able to have a productive, effective conversation with her and explain to her. I realized the importance for ourselves and for our children and the Talmidim and Talmidos, how vital it is to be able to empower ourselves and the educators to be able to transmit these basics of Yadus, Metzias HaBoirei, Torah Min HaShamayim, Maimer Har Sinai, Schar V'Oinish, with clarity, conviction, in a compelling fashion. And Baruch Hashem, over the last few years, we have seen the CDs that Rabbi Sapirman has produced have been listened to by well over 25,000 people. The Shiurim on Torah Anytime have been downloaded by over 60,000 people, and the special for educators material on Bir Tefillah and Parsha with Emunah and various other write-ups on Purim and Chanukah have been downloaded by 18,000 mechanchim and mechanchos, 100 countries, all over the world and all the continents. Books that we have been, the first 2 books, Mr. putting out the 3rd book, but the first 2 have already been purchased and read by 4,000 people. And we are constantly receiving emails about the material and about the newsletter that we put out each week and how impactful and often life-changing it is. And we hope to continue with your help to be able to do so. So thank you all for joining us this evening. And now it is my tremendous kavod to introduce Rabbi Dovid Sapirman Shlita, who I have a zchus to work with and get to know personally, to hear from him divrei bracha and divrei chizuk on this important topic.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining. Perhaps the listeners this evening think that this presentation is merely a fundraiser. That's not exactly correct. The truth is that there's an even greater purpose to this meeting, to give over the message that there is a severe lack of emunah in our dor, in adults as well, but especially among the youth, and that there are relatively easy solutions to the problem. I have had the schus to be in chinuch for well over a yovel, and it is my honor to share my experiences with you tonight. By way of introduction, let me say to you, emunah is not a contract that one signs. It's not something we just agree to subscribe to, part of the frum package. It's how we were brought up. We were told about Har Sinai, Mashiach, Olam Haba, and all the rest. So, of course, if you're from, you automatically believe in it all. If only it were so. If only it were so. The distance between just subscribing to what we were taught and being totally confident is greater than the distance between heaven and earth. In a recent publication, an Orthodox publication, they said as follows: a group of young Jewish day school graduates, all of whom were raised in Orthodox homes, were recently asked about their belief in God. Not a single one could explain why he believes in God or why believing in the Torah differs from believing in any other belief system. So this was the culmination of their entire religious education. This was their bottom line. Perhaps many think that it's different in the Olam HaYeshivas. In our Olam HaTorah, our Yeshiva Bachrim, our Beis Yaakov girls, our Jung. Rav Pinchas Jung and I have spoken, both of us, to the youth directly in various moistus of all types in the Olam HaTorah. And we know that it's not any different in them or anywhere on the globe. This was part of an essay that was published from a senior mechanech who has lectured to teens all over the globe. And he heard this from high school girls in a very insulated from community. Quote, "No one knows if Yiddishkeit is true. We just do it because that is what everyone else does, right?" So since the inception of Ani Maamin, we have spoken publicly to over 50,000 students, parents, and mechanchim. We've also had many private sessions with mechanchim, with menahalim, with menahalois. And in all our discussions with those hundreds, perhaps already over 1,000 mechanchim, almost all have agreed that it's not any different in our Olam HaTorah. Rabbi Shlomo Miller Shlita wrote 12 years ago, as a haskama to my first publication, that Yeshiva Bachrim and Beis Yaakov girls have serious doubts in the basics of Emunah, even in Torah min hashamayim, in the validity and authenticity of Torah shebiksav and in Torah shebal peh. I got an SOS message from a chashuva bacher learning in a very big yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. He said, "Can you send me some sets of the CDs here? There are many seventh-year Beis Medrash Bachrim here that need this desperately." When I spoke to one of the mashgichim of that particular yeshiva, he said to me, he encounters this problem and this lack every single day. Rabbi Avraham Chaim Levine Zeichet Tzadik Livracha, in his psicha to the Torah Masorah Convention in 2009, he said as follows: many people are offering the yeshivas and the Beis Yaakovs new curriculums on different subjects, and they're all very good. But unfortunately, there's no time for new curriculums. But there's one curriculum that may not be skipped. It cannot be skipped. And that is the curriculum of Emunah. It should be taught as a separate course and incorporated in all the limudim. And then he advocated for Ani Maamin by name, myself, for Pinchas Jung, and our materials. I received questions from students in a Beis Yaakov high school and a Masifta in the Midwest. two meisters on a visit to the Midwest. So since I had some correspondence with Rabbi Feldman Shlita, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, I said, perhaps the Rosh Yeshiva would like to see the questions that I received. So he emailed me back. He said, the questions are eye-openers as to what is going on in the real world. Do you cover them in your books? If not, you need to write another one. Let me share a couple of stories with you. I got a phone call from parents in a very chashuv, big Torah community. And they said to me as follows: our son finished Shas. He made a siyum on Shas. And he seemed to be very distraught about something. And when he finally came out with it, he said, how do I know that all of this is true? Ganz Shas, and how do I know that all of this is true? So they consulted the Reish Kollel in that city. He suggested they call me. And indeed, I spent tens of hours with that bacher on the phone. And Baruch Hashem, he's ready to move on. I received a call from a Maggid Shir in one of the very big Hasidic communities in Brooklyn. And he said to me as follows: we have a chassan. He's a tzaddik, a masmid, and a Talmud Chacham. The only problem is he has no emunah at all. No emunah at all. So I spoke to him. So he said to me, in this matzav that I am now, I will not go to the chuppah. I spent hours and hours on the phone with him, including biyoim chuppasai. Baruch Hashem, he's good to go. A young man in town came to me a few years ago. A young man who was giving a shir. He was a chashuv, a young man with a chashuv a shver and a chashuv a family he comes from. And he said to me, the system left me completely empty. I said, we're going to start over from the bottom up. We've been, Baruch Hashem, we've long passed those barriers, and he's ready to go, move on. He's moving on. He's ben aliyah today. When Rav Pinchas Jung and I, a number of years ago, traveled to London, England together, we divided the various meisters there between us. A few times we spoke together. In one particular place, one of the chashuv rabbanim, whom we had never spoken to, either one of us, and never corresponded with, he got up and he spoke about the need that he sees in the community. I thought I wrote the script. It was just like my words exactly. He was describing what we see and what we've seen and the reason that we created Ani Maamin. The following questions were submitted by 7th grade boys here in Toronto. Listen to the questions that could plague a 7th grader in our door. And I'm quoting their words, because I had to fix some of the spelling and the punctuation, but these are their words. How does it make sense that there are billions of people in the world all thinking that their religion is right? And we also think that ours is right. And we have proof. But it doesn't make sense because everyone thinks theirs is right. So, in other words, so how do we know? Another question. Same group. How do we know that the Torah is real and that Judaism is the real religion? Why should we believe that Mashiach is ever going to come? How do we know everything in the Torah is true? Why should we do mitzvahs? How do we know that the Jews are the chosen people? This question came from an 11th grade girl in the Midwest when I spoke there in person. And this was a girl who looked like a very fine girl, an 11th grade girl. We say we have the truth, but so do all the other religions. How do I know that when I come upstairs, they won't tell me I had the wrong truth? The following question was asked during a live presentation in one of the northeastern states by a high school girl. If Judaism is the only possible truth, and it requires no leap of faith, as opposed to every other religion, then we say we've got it, it's clear. Then why are there so many people following other religions and not Judaism? These questions are asked over and over and over again wherever we go. The following testimonial was written by Rabbi Dovid Donner in response to Rabbi Pinchas Jung at the time was going every year in the summertime when they still had school, when we had summer vacation, they still were in session, and he would give Emunah presentations for the course of a week. And after he said how it literally reached deeply into the neshamas of his audience, opening new vistas of recognition in the Borei Olam. So he wrote in this beautiful testimonial that he said, in fact, the Ani Maamin experience is a wake-up call for us mechanchim to focus on this important area that we may hitherto have considered as being self-understood and therefore superfluous. We used to think that they have it, and now we know that they don't. Our first set of audio lectures is entitled Dama Shetoshiv La'atzmecha, Know What to Answer to Yourself. It attempts to substantiate the belief in the Tzius Abere, the existence of the Creator, in Maimed Har Sinai, the revelation at Har Sinai, and in Torah Min HaShamayim. The following is just one of so many thank you emails from a distinguished member of our own Toronto community. I just wanted to send you a quick email thanking you for the wonderful CDs which you put out. Ever since I listened to those CDs, I've become a changed person. The newfound emunah and bitachon which these tapes have taught me is unbelievable. I listened to them before Rosh Hashanah, and it made the Yemei Adin so much more meaningful to me. I now see the world in a whole different light. My davening is a different davening, and my learning is a different learning. I can only say that I wish I would have listened to these tapes 20 years ago. It is my belief that these talks should be given in every school, and if that were to happen, the teenagers going off the derech would be drastically reduced. Can you imagine how many more could become similarly inspired if we could only reach out to them? I have received SOS calls from students or from their parents. My son says he doesn't know why he should believe. I've had private sessions with Talmidim and Talmidas with doubts from almost every moised here in town, and these sessions always start with the very same way. How do we know this is all true? I was slated to speak in a yeshiva in person. This was before Zoom days, before GamZoom Ltova as well. And most of the session was going to be questions and answers. I would speak a little while, but then, so the Menayel said to me, how much time do you need? I said, I need 2 hours. He said, if I tell the Bachrim that the session is going to last 2 hours, I'll have a mutiny. They'll rebel. So I said, I need 2 hours. He told them. This is the letter that I received from him after the presentation. L'chvoid, on behalf of the entire yeshiva, I would like to express my hakaras hatov for the inspiring lecture presented on the topic of Torah Shebaal Peh. The question-answer discussion was well received and greatly appreciated by the Bachrim. The Bachrim felt comfortable asking pertinent questions that were on their minds, and the questions were addressed and answered to their satisfaction. Parents have actually contacted me that their sons came home and reported how valuable the discussions were. I was personally amazed to see that our 70 Bachrim of Masifta age sat for 2 hours straight and were even disappointed when the sessions ended. Those are the results when we let them speak their minds and address their questions directly. When they're not intimidated, when they can address their doubts and receive solid, common sense answers. And you have to know that you don't have to know Kabbalah. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. You have to know something, of course. You need some idea, but mostly the answers are based on common sense from the everything that's needed is found in the words of the Rishonim. Simple surface things without going into deep research. The confusion is very great, especially in our polluted atmosphere. And contrary to what many people may think, the students are not asking for the purpose of challenging. They're not asking lekanter, and they're not looking for excuses not to keep. They simply want the reassurance that Moshe emes v'seirosoi emes. The sense of relief that permeates the room after the session is palpable. I read you a small excerpt from a letter from the Menahelis of a Hasidic girls' high school in Brooklyn. She attended a training course that we gave in Torah Masorah's headquarters, and took about a year. She invited me to the school, and the girls were asked to write in questions, and a few girls wrote in questions in advance. And while I was speaking, and they began to hear Amareto to the Zach, that I'm actually allowing them to ask their questions and answering with just common sense. I got a pile, while during the presentation, I got a pile of questions this high. So the Menahelis wrote, after she wrote a thank you, of course, she said, firstly to note the questions the girls have. Good girls from good homes in a frum school. And she had told me that they're very particular about who they take into the school. Yet in Golus, so mavulbul, so pained. You were able to see their relief at the opportunity to ask. And of course, to Baruch Hashem, get such clear, straight answers. I could go on reading more letters and testimonials. I don't know if it'll last till Simchas Torah, but I could go on for quite a while, but I don't want to be Matriach Da'olam. Our hope is to disseminate these materials to a much broader audience, to expose as many of our youth, not to mention adults, to the compelling emunah, which is the Messiah of Am Yisrael. May we soon see the day when every single Yid will fulfill the pasuk, V'tzadik be'emunoso yichya. We thank all those who share our vision of strengthening emunah in Klal Yisrael, the many Rabbonim who have given us their haskamas and encouragement. Among many others, there are Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, Shlita, all the Rabbonim Shlita, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, Rav Elya Brudny, Rav Aaron Feldman, Rav Zev Leff, Rav Reuven Feinstein, Rav Shlomo Miller, Rav Moshe Mordechai Lowy, Rav Yaakov Michael Hirschman, and many others. And Rav Avram Chaim Levine Zeichat Tzadik Levracha was very, very supportive of our work. We thank our supporters from the bottom of our hearts for their help, past and present. Thank you all for joining tonight. May Hashem Yisborach keep you and your families and preserve you, mikol tzara v'tzukah, u'mikol nega u'machala, and allow us all to be there in person, to be mekabil, pnei Mashiach tzidkenu. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Sapirman. Inspirational, and it inspires not only for deeper thought, but for action as well, because Amaisa Hu Ikar. I'm going to post how everybody can participate in this holy work. If Moshe Pogrow is on, you can unmute yourself and you can certainly read the screen how people can participate in this. I would also at this point, I know that Rabbi Sapirman said that he doesn't want questions. However, let's assume if you did have a question, please post it in the text. I want people to write in the chat box, not a question and answer, just let them write the question. And at this point, these are the donation directions. Rabbi Pogrow, are you there?
Yeah, yes, but there's something on the screen. I can't really, my camera's on, but I can't even see myself on the screen.
Oh, okay, because we're sharing. Are you able to read what's on there?
Yes. Please make checks payable to the Jewish Heritage Foundation, and the address is Rabbi Sapirman, 25 Khedive. That's KHED as in dog, IVE Avenue, Toronto, Ontario. The letter M6A, the number 2 GI. Or for American checks, please make checks payable to Toronto, Ontario, M6A2G1. And American checks can be made, please make checks payable to the Ani Maamin Foundation. And the address is 20 Rita Avenue, Unit 312, Muncie, New York, 10952. In addition, there is a link. I don't know if it's working on the Zoom or not, but you can donate online. animaaminfoundation.org/donate, and there are directions there how to donate online. Again, animaaminfoundation.org/donate. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and kashem she'noistem hayda ala avar. We also are mevakesh on the future, and we look forward to your ongoing relationship and your ongoing participation to be our shutzvim in our further work. To help really to do the Rebbeinu Shalom's work and to machazik the basics of Yahadus throughout Amenu Yisrael. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Pogrow. This is the letter that Rabbi Sapirman was referring to when he showed it to me earlier to insert it into the PowerPoint presentation. I wanted not just to hear it, because Ein Adon Mishmiya L'Re'iyah, and I thought you would want to see the letter, take the time to read the letter and read it, every word that's written here, and see the impact that thinking about Amunah and listening to the tapes and reading the book, the impact that it can have on your life. And not only on your life, but your life of your family. You want me to read it? Can I read it? It's okay? Okay. Dear Rabbi Sapirman, Shlita, I just wanted to send Rabbi Sapirman a quick email thanking you for the wonderful CDs which you put out. Ever since I listened to those CDs, I've become a changed person. The newfound emunah and bitachon which these tapes have taught me is unbelievable. I listened to them before Rosh Hashanah, and it made the Yemei Hadin so much more meaningful to me. I now see the world in a whole different light. My davening is a different davening, and my learning is a different learning. I can only say that I wish I would have listened to these tapes 20 years ago. It is my belief that these talks should be given in every school, and if that were to happen, the teenagers going off the derech would be drastically reduced. And then it was signed. So I urge you to be able to participate in getting this message across. A change in Amunah in a young person is certainly a change in Amunah in an adult, and it can change lives and therefore change the world. At this time, I'd like to thank Rabbi Pogrow for all the work in putting this Parlour meeting together. I also have to thank Mrs. Razy Brin for all her work and her diligence and attention to detail. She in fact asked that we play an Ani Maamin song at the end. It is close to Adar, so I'm going to share with you that in a moment, so we can, certainly Besimcha will help us receive Amunah. Is that right? Once a person's Besimcha is easier, it becomes a kli for Amunah. So I will play that for you. While everybody can get their checkbooks out or click on a different tab on the computer. I know you're all computer savvy and you know how to open a mini window. If you're in America, click on Ani Maamin Foundation.org to donate. If you're in Canada and you want to click right now and with your credit card, go to tinyurl.com, AMF Parlour Meeting 5781. It's up on the screen, tinyurl.com, AMF Parlour Meeting 5781. It'll take you to a charity fund and you'll be able to get a Canadian receipt instantly.
I don't see the donating.
Right here, tiny euro, it's on the side. If they're making a check, they make it payable at the top. So the top portion is those who are in Canada. Make your checks payable to Jewish Heritage Foundation, and the address here at 25 Kadive Avenue. Tiny Euro, or if you want to pay by credit card right now, tinyurl.com /AMF Parlour Meeting 5781. If you're in the US, go to animaaminfoundation.org /donate. If you're paying by check, you go to, please send it to 20 Rita Avenue, Muncie, New York. I'm going to leave this on the screen a little bit longer, and I will be posting it to the chat momentarily. Thank you.
I'm a little confused. Where is the donate button or screen?
Not on here.
1 second. 1 second. What is your question for? Are you in Canada or the US?
I'm in the US.
You in the US. Go to Ani Maamin Foundation. I'll take you to the website right now. Okay.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Here's the Ani Maamin Foundation. Bear with me one moment. Here, so see right here, I'm on the Ani Maamin Foundation page. .org.
Donate. Okay.
You got it? Yep, you see the donate right up top?
Right.
Everybody who wants to go to Ani Maamin, for you're in the US, and just because you're on your phone, it's not an excuse. animaaminfoundation.org. There's the donate button right here, and you click it, and you're able to donate. Today, this is the Parlour meeting, and you'll be able to donate right over here. See the donate?
To the Canadian.
And if you want to do the Canadian one, it's on the same page. You can go there as well, and you can click here. Here's the information if you want. Okay, this is a good idea. Let's go through the Ani Maamin website. You can see it right here. There's the donate button up at the top. Once you click on it, it's going to take you either to the US address or the Canadian address. Toggle down, donate now, and if you're in Canada, donate right here. If you'd like to donate by check, it's right over here.
music now?
Yeah, we're going to play some music.
Thank you all.
Where did it go? Just had it a second ago. There we go. And share screen. Yeah.
Hallo, ja, in de eerste nog ga ik wat dingen. En dan mijn elkaar ribbon in between. Okay. Dus ik neem niet hoe die like that funny rubbers en dan ga ik ribbon. En there we go. Oké, de wel tussen trek naar waar. Ani Maamin.
Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. If you need any information, please email animaaminfoundation.org. Thank you, everybody. Guten Chodesh. If anybody wants a copy of tonight's telecast or broadcast, please email Ani Maamin. Thank you.
Tuesday, Friday, good.